How you doing?
I'm okay.
How's your week been going?
I don't know, long, tired.
Yeah. Yeah. Why?
Just because I haven't been sleeping and I work every day.
Oh, that'll do it. Why haven't you been sleeping?
I think I forget exactly what it's called. There's a word for it, but the term means like you're stealing time from yourself.
Oh, there is a word for that.
In like therapy, whatever.
Yeah, there is a therapy adjacent word for that.
But basically, I feel like
word.
my life isn't really fulfilling, and so, or maybe there's some part of my life that I'm sort of scared of or something during the day that I'm hiding from, maybe.
I'm Googling it.
And then I sort of steal time at night where I can be alone and like do my things and like have my time.
Oh yeah, it's this delightfully literal phrase. It's revenge bedtime procrastination.
Yeah. And so I used to have this big time, like when I was living at home. I used to not go to bed till 2 or 3 every night. And I guess for some people that's normal, but you know, that became like my normal, and then I'd whatever. So I'm kind of back into that phase, and I don't really know what's going on wrong, but
the weirdest thing is that it is normal for some people.
And it was normal for me for a long time, but then recently I kind of switched up my habits, and because I work really early. I work either at 6 or 7 a.m. every day, weekday.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
You know, I really have to be in bed by 11 to really like functioning. And that just hasn't been happening. I wish it wasn't happening right now. Well, no, I more just wish I knew what was going wrong. My microphone's dirty, and now that I'm on camera, people can see that.
Well, I'll tell you what, Francie. So my microphone doesn't have a foam beanie on top of it, and so I put a hat on it. So
like a hat?
There's a hat on my mic. Yeah,
oh
like
God.
a Carhartt hat.
My roommate's birthday, my roommate Stella's birthday was yesterday, so we had a little thing for her. And her friend knitted her gloves that have their mittens, but they have the pointer finger and the thumb out, which I just think is like the funniest thing.
So they're mittens. Okay. So they're half mittens and half gloves.
Yeah. And it's super silly, but like in a really fun way.
I'm doing the gesture right now that you would be allowed to make if you had those. It's just the 3 fingers out, like, what's up?
Yeah. How was your day?
My day has been... I like to work. I know this is weird. But I feel I have a hard time with no work days. Like Saturday and Sunday are hard enough, and those are normal, but it was a snow day today, and I was like, you're not going to be a melting pile of degeneracy today because we've gone through this too many times, you and me, Eli. So I didn't let myself not do things. I make sure that I made myself breakfast early, and I like took a bath early, and I've been practicing. Hang on.
What have you been practicing?
I've been practicing the kalimba because I have this beautiful. I'm showing the podcast right now.
No, I think I've seen it.
Teaching myself Silent Night.
Amazing.
Yeah, I did things so that I didn't become a melting pile of degeneracy. So it's okay.
I have a lot of things that I say in my head, and a lot of like bad habits that I'll say too. Like I'm always saying I hate people. I'm always saying shit like that. I hate people.
Wow. Yeah, I don't do that.
And it doesn't mean I hate people. I love people. It means I'm frustrated with this thing that's happening, and I don't know how to express that I'm frustrated about this one thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I, you know, like this past week at work has been sort of like, I don't want to be there at all. And usually I like work. I like working too. But I guess I was just like overtired. I wasn't feeling it. Every time someone would walk in, I'd be like growling in my brain. I'm like, you really want to fuck with me? Like in my head. I think that this YouTuber I once watched described our brains as like coffee filters, and
Francie works as a barista, by the way, for the listeners at home. Anyway, continue.
My boss would argue with this, but you cannot reuse a coffee filter. He would say that you can. You can't.
You can't. It's true.
And I guess what she was saying, this YouTuber, was like, when you get tired, your coffee filter like degrades, and the brain to mouth filter doesn't work as well. It was a lot harder for me to put on a face and like be cheerful, because I like being cheerful.
I've noticed.
But it is putting on a face, and
yeah,
putting on a mask, and you get tired.
No, I feel like the closer someone is, the closer I've gotten to you is when you allow yourself to not be cheerful around me.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that's true.
Just like,
I don't love that, but I think it's true.
Why don't you love that? I love it, actually. It's been a universally positive experience for me to experience you not forcing yourself to be cheerful.
I think, if someone walks into the store and I'm not like on my game, like smiling at them and being really sort of trying to make their day better, I feel bad about it. And I don't like feeling bad.
Why do you feel bad about it? It's just coffee.
I know.
I don't imagine that sentence is super helpful for you.
Well, I work right next to a hospital, so I like to convince myself that I have a very important role in the hospital ecosystem, because we caffeinate the doctors. They don't have like a cafeteria.
You know what? You're so right. But I can't help but think two things. The first, maybe the second is, you just said your role was to caffeinate them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. So it is just coffee.
Right. Yeah. So actually I'll amend what I said, because it's not just coffee, but it's not just smiles.
Yeah. And you,
right.
And you can be I'm picturing someone in my life right now who is not a smiley person, but the closer that I've gotten to her, the more I've learned that she's the biggest girl's girl I've ever met. She's one of the most considerate, thoughtful people that I've ever known. But she's
RBF
not
lives
smiley,
matter.
And she's like, describes herself as abrasive, but I'm like, the more that I get to know you, the more I know that you're not abrasive, at all. She has been there for me through shit that I, desperately needed someone for.
Yeah.
And she was just fucking there, so it's, I don't know. This is something that I struggle with. Like, I guess it's masking, or you could say that. And maybe that's sometimes how it feels.
There's a great
I don't know.
new Dr. K video about how introverts can develop charisma. And I think that video taught me that I am not an introvert, but there was some great stuff in there. One of the things that I took away from that, it wasn't like explicitly said, it was more like a conclusion, is you don't have to smile to have lots of charisma. You don't have to smile to improve someone's day, all those things. It's more about like things like maintaining eye contact. And, statistically, scientifically, apparently it doesn't really matter what's on your face as long as you're being authentic. That's
so funny that you say that, because I will find myself, eye contact can be really hard. I think that I do appreciate eye contact, and I will give eye contact. I often don't like receiving it though.
Yeah, it's a powerful tool,
But I'll find myself staring off into the distance while I'm talking to a customer, fully engaging with what they're saying and smiling, but I'm not looking anywhere near their eyes. It's like it's like my weird thing where if we're in the car together, I don't like it when you look at me.
Yeah, it's actually not weird at all. There's nothing weird about that. If you want, we could talk about how this works, because this might be like useful for people listening to know.
Okay.
So does
it have to do with the mirror neurons?
We could talk about mirror neurons. That's not where I was going to take it.
Yeah, talk about. Say what you're saying.
So human eyes. Look at your eyes. Everybody, look at your eyes. I'm looking at them in the OBS preview screen. You can see just about the largest proportion in any mammal of what's called the sclera, which is the white part of the eye. Shout out to Dr. Glockenflecken, my favorite ophthalmologist podcaster. You can see more of the sclera of the human eye than basically any other mammal. And the reason it's pretty well sort of agreed upon now that the reason for that is that it's important for human beings to see where other people's eyes are looking. So the whites tell you that from a far away distance. Like you can see where someone's looking from, 50 yards if you have good vision. So why? Well, humans are social and we need to get mates and avoid threats and avoid, making people hate us so that they'll cast us out of the group, right? Because we need other people to find food and protect us and all these things. So we need to communicate, and eyes are absolutely vital for communicating, and they can convey a full range of emotions. So the reason it's good to make eye contact is because you usually aren't intending to hurt or murder someone, and you can communicate that with your eyes, right? It doesn't really matter whether you're feeling kind of grumpy that day, because nobody's going to perceive that as a threat. Some people, on the other hand, actually don't have great intentions or actually are thinking something creepy. Like you can sort of imagine what I'm thinking here. You walk by somebody and they find you attractive and they're thinking about like having sex with you. And when they meet your eyes, you're going to get some of that. Right?
Yeah.
And that's not going to be pleasant. So it's an evolutionary, there's been evolutionary pressure to make the eyes sort of accurately convey some gray, like some blurry but still important details about like your intentions and your emotional state.
So is that why I don't like to look people in the eye when I'm not feeling my best?
So there's two things about that. You mentioned looking in a different direction when you talked to customers, and you mentioned not wanting people to make eye contact with you. Actually, what you said was to look at you.
Specifically while they're driving.
So my specific question is that while I'm driving, does the eye contact, pupil to pupil, matter, or is it that I'm just looking at you?
I feel like it's that I want us both to be looking at the road.
Okay, so that's what I thought, because when you don't want someone to look at you, that is a totally different thing than eye contact, and this is basic anxiety, right? Like you have an association with what that means from somewhere, and you like have learned that this is dangerous. It's just conditioning. It's just learning. But for people who
there's another piece of it.
Yeah.
Which is that I sometimes feel like it's demanding attention, and I'm like, I'm paying attention.
So
like, you don't
what's demanding attention?
I'm paying attention.
Yeah.
You're looking at me.
Yeah. So are we talking about eye contact now?
No, I guess we're not.
So what do you mean? So I don't need to see what do people demand of you? Specifically.
Attention.
Yeah, but like what do they say? Or what do you think they're thinking? Are you thinking like look at me? Oh yeah.
Are you listening to me?
Yeah. Okay. This is classic.
And
this is what
I'm listening. Just
if I could beam this into the minds of early childhood teachers and just make them believe it and neuralize them like from Men in Black, this is like one of the top 5 things I would neuralize into them. Is that so anybody with attention deficit disorder, what's the best way to explain this? Super, super important fundamental thing about attention deficit. So in order for someone with ADHD to pay attention, I guess I'll just say this right. Okay, so I'm about to describe the experience of a thing that I don't have, but I'm quoting people who have it, sort of type beat. Okay, so tell me what I say sounds wrong, and that'll be a good thing to talk about. So, if you have ADHD, you've got basically shells of attention in your brain. Okay, the outermost shell is like the thing that you're actually proximately is occupying your brain. Okay, and it's if you have ADHD, it's usually not what you want to be occupying your brain. So some things that might be in the shells are the sensation of your clothing, a song that's been in your head playing on repeat, a word or phrase playing on repeat, a recurrent thought, like a recurrent little ding in your head, maybe something that you're worried about, And then there will also usually be a layer that is upset with you for not paying attention to what you want to be paying attention to. And then there will be a layer that is on the thing that you want your attention to be on. How does that sound?
I think that's all happening to me right now.
Yeah. Crazy, right? Teachers listening to this podcast, you can understand ADHD. It is possible. So teachers constantly want people with ADHD to look at them. They want their students to look at them because they want to not have to repeat themselves, okay? So spoiler alert, you're going to have to repeat yourself. What happens is if you have these shells, you want to occupy your brain so that you can kind of eat up these shells. If you're thinking about chemistry, right, you want to fill up the orbitals with electrons so that you can create a bond, okay? And the bond is going to be most stable when all of the valence electrons are filled. The slots for valence electrons are filled. So if you are fidgeting with something, that's a shell. If you're looking away from the person who's speaking, that's a shell, okay? But if you are forcing your brain to look at the person, it's eating up the shell that would otherwise be used to listen to the person. Now, that might not make sense, but forcing yourself to listen to someone is usually about 3 different shells. There's actually moving your eyes to look at them. There's, am I doing this well enough? And there's some sort of self-judgment shell. There's usually 3 different shells.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'll be paying attention to this has actually happened so embarrassingly with a friend reading me their writing. Short story.
That's hard.
And we finished the piece and I realized I wasn't paying attention to a single word.
Yep. And you felt so bad, right?
The next time, of course, the next time she reads me something, I'm thinking about how I need to be paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And I maybe catch some of it, but I'm not truly there. And I guess maybe the right thing to do in that moment is just be honest and say, I need you to start over, or like, we got to do this later. I can't. Or like, give it to me. I'll read it.
Yeah. So this is why I describe it as shells. And I have 3 shells here conveniently. So the inner shell, okay, is the words of the person that are coming in through your audio processing. What is that? Corpus callosum, right in the back of your brain. And then there's a shell, which is you. So what were you thinking? Say it again. So you were trying to listen. The second time around, you were thinking.
Second time, I was trying to listen.
Okay.
And so that was taking up a lot of my attention.
But there was other things. Can you just repeat some of what you said about the second time?
I think that's all I said, that I was trying to focus on listening, and so I didn't catch all of it.
Okay. So then when she finished reading, or at some point, you might realize I'm still not listening. That's the third shell. Right? You might. So it's funny because what really happens there is, this is the end of the metaphor. You have, imagine this like sun floating in the sky above the shells, but the sun is actually like an eyeball. Okay. And that eye is you. Okay. And you're observing all of those shells. And so at some point that eye goes, oh God, none of these shells are actually the story.
Yeah, it's funny because I can relate and picture exactly what you're saying.
Yep.
Like, it makes perfect sense to me. I don't know if it.
Watch the second Dr. K interview with Ms. Kiff, viewers, if you want to know where this came from.
I watched the first one, actually. That's like one of the only Dr. K videos I've watched for some reason. The first Ms. Kiff video.
I think he's done 5.
Weird. Oh, okay. Maybe it wasn't the first then.
Yeah, it was 4 years ago. It was the first one. But so the thing about the looking is, I think there's 2 things there. If you're in a school context, don't force kids to look at you, because it creates, not because they're going to be able to listen to you if they're looking away, because they're not. It's okay. You're going to have to repeat yourself. It's all good. Change your context for learning if you don't want to have to do that. Change how you teach, in other words. But the actual reason why you don't want to ask them to look at you is because it creates new shells. And the number of shells, the higher that number goes, the worse they're going to do at school.
Yeah. It's
That's
funny
why.
because sorry.
No, please.
When I was in high school, I just didn't pay attention at all unless I was interested, which was like 2 classes maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was just not listening for 45 minutes of the class. I was just completely somewhere else, teaching myself cursive, like doing whatever else I wanted to do. Class became my me time. I was like, I'm not going to get any of this.
Yep. So if we go back to the coffee shop when you're staring away from the customer, let's say you're also tired. If you're not tired, when you focus on purpose, okay, what happens is your like eye gets like a laser, and it sort of like smashes all the shells, like crushes them, or it's like you can imagine the shells being like squished together and smashing. And that is what you can do if you're capable of focusing on something on purpose, which is very hard, right? That's what ADHD is.
Oh, interesting. I interpreted that totally wrong.
Well, how did you interpret it?
As when you're trying to focus on something, you're destroying your ability to focus on anything. That's how I took it. Like the laser is destroying your ability to focus on anything.
Often that is the case, because if you're not successful with intentionally focusing, you're actually just creating more shells.
Yeah. It's never been hard for me to remember. This is a lie. I'm lying right now. I was going to say it's never been hard for me to remember people's orders, but it absolutely is.
So when you're looking off to the side of somebody and you're listening to them, and you are listening to them, that's Francie's. So the thing about being tired, so I'll just finish the first thought. That's Francie's brain trying not to create more shells, because it knows that if you can create fewer shells, then you'll have a better chance of focusing. The other thing is, if you're tired, that specific part of your brain that like charges that laser beam is weaker. That's what being tired is. So that's why that happens.
Yeah, that's big time. That's my life right now.
But I always see this from the other way around, where I see people who have ADHD. I've told you this story before, of the girl in middle school who I had to tell something twice to. You remember the story?
Keep telling it. Maybe
Okay, I tried not to do the whole story to remind you. So I was out at recess, and
I do remember this.
Yeah, the girl asked me, "What's your name?" And I said my name. She looks at me, smiles, nods, turns back to what she was doing. I know she doesn't know. So I say, "You want me to say my name again?" And she says yes, and she says yes with this like this face that was very appreciative of me knowing, so that she could actually know my name.
Yeah.
And hilariously, I saw her a month later and I forgot her name and she remembered mine. So there you go.
Well, I got the all the countries recognized by the UN 8 minutes, 100% in 8 minutes yesterday.
That's crazy.
And this is pretty much all I have going on. And I also finished all of Ted Lasso.
What is Ted Lasso?
It's a show. It's a brilliant show about a American college football coach, like a mid-tier football coach who gets hired to coach real football, otherwise known as soccer, in England.
Okay.
And he's sort of like this. Here's my thing about Ted Lasso. It's truly a show about liberal values.
I love that.
And it's amazing. And it's done well.
What are liberal values?
Well, it's very inclusive. All the characters are very, liberal and, use inclusive language. And
right.
Like, it's very diverse. And it's just, it's done well is the thing. Because I think that it could very easily not be done well.
Yeah.
But it's not cringe, and it's just like, it's, I don't remember when it came out, but it's like 2020 is when it's set, but it's like no COVID timeline, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's this like Southern man with a mustache who is just like super with it and just gets it and is very nice and kind and doesn't get angry. And this like football team, and he like literally knows nothing about the sport. And he was hired to because the owner of the team is the ex-wife of the previous owner who like loved this club, and she only hired him to bring the club down. So that's like the
that's
premise
crazy.
of the
And
show.
he says no.
And he says
no.
And he says, I actually don't care about winning and losing, and I'm going to change all of your lives for the better. It's going to be really funny.
Yeah, that's so funny.
And
that's great.
Me and Mom were watching it at the same time, and she was she texts me and she's like, you're going through Ted Lasso too fast. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Mom, I have nothing else going on. And then a few days later she texts me and she's like, did you finish it? And I'm like, yes. And she's like, don't tell me anything. And I'm like, Mom, you texted me. Like, I was not planning on giving you any
Did you say
spoilers.
Mom?
Yeah.
Oh.
Our mother.
Oh, okay.
I just thought that was funny. I was like, you're prompting me.
I thought we were talking about Mel.
No, I said Mom.
So Mel is not a part of this story.
Mel is not a part of this. She is coming to visit me.
Comment below if you thought she said Mel.
She's coming to visit me, Mel.
That's cool.
In a few weeks. So that's fun. Anyway.
Some of Francie's friends get names, and some of Francie's friends, she says my friend. She's trying to protect people's personal,
Yeah. I think I figured out how sugar highs work.
Okay.
I think I just figured it out one day. I haven't looked it up at all. I just wanted to see if there was a chance that I was right. Because everyone says sugar highs aren't real. But it's also kind of clear that something happens. Or a lot of people think that something happens.
Okay.
So,
yep.
And this just comes from my experience of like, what happens to me when I eat something that's really sweet? But, sweets are usually not that high in like protein or nutrients. So I'm like, what happens to me? I'm like, okay, well, maybe my blood sugar spikes and I get a little bit of energy. And so then I expend that energy as if I had eaten something that was more like fueling for my body, because I got this spike of energy from the sugar or from whatever. And so then I expend that energy. Picture a kid eating candy and then like just going wild. And then the crash is actually your body realizing that it actually has nothing. No, it hasn't been fueled at all. Because whatever that spike was, that blood sugar spike or whatever, went back down. And you had just expended more energy than you had. Is that right?
Well, that's very easily testable, friends. You have a bunch of sugar and you don't exercise. You don't do anything. Just sit around.
Would you still feel anything?
It's very hard to test this on yourself, because it's such low-hanging fruit for the placebo effect to make you feel a bit more energetic or a bit more lethargic.
Well, but so what is a sugar high then?
So, when you eat a bunch of sugar, your body is going to produce a whole bunch of insulin to lower your blood sugar. This is gonna, depending on how your pancreas is functioning, might make you feel a little tingly. Indeed, probably will if it's a whole bunch of sugar. But just like a little, like it's a low key feeling, because your pancreas is gonna deal with that blood sugar, is gonna flush it out of it's gonna make it get metabolized out of your bloodstream. So it can be a high, right? Because if you eat a sweet thing, it's gonna like feel good, because that's why we eat sweet things, is there's a dopaminergic response to sweet things. You get a piece of cake and you eat it, you're gonna feel good. And so that is like gonna be a sort of a high in the technical sense, but it's not on the order of highs from other psychoactive substances. And this is also the only way it's sort of indirectly psychoactive, whereas caffeine is directly psychoactive. Caffeine will block the adenosine receptors, which means that you won't feel as sleepy. So that's why people say there's no sugar high, because there's no direct psychoactive effect. On the other hand, you are going to feel like you have some energy because you had these simple carbohydrates, which were very quickly metabolized. Also, something people don't think about very often. The reason that one other reason that sugar gives you energy so quickly is because it's very soluble in water, right? It's very easy for the stomach and the small intestines to get these into the bloodstream because it's very soluble in water. It also doesn't have to be broken down very far from, if you have a complex carbohydrate, it has to be broken down. Enzymes will snip it up into littler pieces until we get a sugar, until we get like a glucose molecule. So it'll give you energy faster for those reasons. And at the same time, a lot of things that are very sugary also have they make you feel heavy. Okay, so if you have a piece of cake or if you have a Starbucks latte, right, that tons of cream and tons of flour, all of that stuff is going to make you feel heavy, which might be masked by the energy. So in a sense, you're not far off with your theory, right?
I think it sounds like I was sort of right.
Yeah.
But it's just more like, I imagine it's more like with kids, I feel like it's kind of like placebo effect. Is like
So it's not exactly placebo.
Run around and have fun.
Yeah, it's not exactly placebo effect. It's like a single thing that is not actually a single thing. Like if you give kids a bunch of candy, that's typically an abnormal thing, right? Like I think it's pretty clear. And this is weird. Like, I even think if you presented this to a parent who believes in sugar highs strongly, they'd be like, oh, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. What about parents who feed their kids way too much sweets? Like, way too much. Like, every day, a candy bar, every single day. Do they get sugar highs? Probably not. Is that because they've built up a psychoactive tolerance? Well, no, right? Because it's not a psychoactive substance like that. But it's because it's less of a reward, right? It's less special.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Like Halloween is like a lot of kids like just get a bunch of candy on Halloween.
Yeah, or a birthday party.
Yeah. That's why I choose to eat sugar all the fucking time.
I also have sugar a lot. I have always had a very easy time turning down things like candy and cake and stuff.
Yeah.
And knowing where my cravings are. And I think that is A, just luck. But B, because I never really stop myself from having sweets if I want them.
Yeah, me neither.
And we didn't eat a lot of sweets growing up.
Yes.
We didn't start having dessert every day until I was like 14.
Yeah. No, I was just talking about this. We were like the ultimate ingredients household.
Yes.
It was meals or bust.
That is true.
It was
and I don't snack. I can't snack. I hate every snack food.
I'm a snacker, but the thing is, if I have snack foods in the house, they're gone very quickly.
Interesting.
So it's like
that is not the case with me. Hilariously, I had mom once gave me a thing of like chocolate covered tiny cookies, and they sat on my refrigerator for a month and a half. Until I would like have one every week. And they're like this, they're like an inch in diameter. And eventually I ate them. But it was like, if there's snack foods in the house, couldn't care less.
Yeah, I could care more. And I do. I'm in it for the snack. This is something me and Connor say. We're both in it for the snack. We love a snack. If there's a snack, I'm there. It's like, do you want to hang out and eat snacks? Yes.
That's
if we're both eating, then yes.
I will have
I also
4
have
chips.
Misophonia.
Oh, misophonia is not well understood. We know that in functional magnetic resonance imaging scans, it's the same part of the brain that lights up when someone watches ASMR, someone who experiences ASMR.
Yeah.
But we don't know why. It is neurological in origin.
Have you heard of this is something I know virtually nothing about, to preface.
Okay, here we go.
There's this this is not related, but there's this connection between Tourette's syndrome and like intrusive thoughts.
I've heard of it.
This?
I've heard of it.
I think that is very interesting. Misophonia I've read a lot about it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, can someone please help me?
Yeah.
And they can't. Like, there's no way of getting over it. If you don't know what misophonia is, it's like if you hear a sound or like it's some sensory input that you get that is like absolutely intolerable, and it creates this like torturous feeling in your mind.
Yes, and there does seem to be some kind of genetic predilection to have it.
Our family would prove that.
I had some symptoms of misophonia when I was younger. They just went away.
I think it was worse for me when I was younger, but it's only quote unquote better now because I know a few ways of just kind of cheating the system.
It is a weird phenomenon.
Super weird. It has people know about like comorbidities. Like if you have misophonia, you might have ADHD or autism or something like that. There's like these comorbidities connections.
Yeah.
Or like OCD. I've heard people describe, I have OCD. This is my symptom. And they describe like misophonia. So I think it's like, because there's so many mental disorders that overlap and will be diagnosed differently based on like who your practitioner is.
Yep.
I think OCD, ADHD are two of those, I think. I've heard. So that's one thing that people know about it. But it's not really, there's no real treatment.
I once met this really delightful elementary schooler who had autism and ADHD, and she was just completely charming, but it was very interesting to meet her and to sort of learn what the world is like for her, and to just like watch to see what she did.
Yeah, because she was sick.
Sick in a good way.
No, sick. I bet she was sick. Oh, yes, in a good way.
In a good way, yeah. So, yeah, no, she was really fun. And when I was working with her, I plucked up the courage to say, like, I think I said, it's really good to see you again, and it makes me happy when you're at school. Something like that, something very literal. And she was very smiley.
Yeah. Sometimes it's crazy how those little things will affect you. My therapist this week told me that I was doing a good job.
Oh, that's so cute.
It was, the way I reacted was insane. I was like,
right.
You can't see my face, but just like picture the O emoji, the like shocked face.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like looked
it's crazy
up slowly.
because
I was like, yeah.
It's crazy because it's crazy if you don't think you're doing a good job. But I totally understand, but your like life is not easy. It's not easy.
Well, sometimes that feels self-inflicted, but
Yeah.
Map quizzes.
Do you remember, Francie, when I burned down the greenhouse?
I do. It was purposeful.
It was purposeful. You were there.
Oh my God, it freaked me out.
Yeah, Dan was there too.
When you were up there doing shit by yourself, like cutting down trees and shit, I got genuinely freaked out.
Well,
I was like, he's gonna die.
I mean, it wasn't amazingly safe, but it also wasn't amazingly dangerous because the trees were small. Trees were small. But
anyway,
burning down the greenhouse, you were there for when I was like taking pieces off of the old, it's a barn, okay? When I say greenhouse, it's like a big wooden barn. And you were there when I was like taking pieces off and moving them to a burn pile and setting them on fire. But that was only phase 1. So phase 2 was I made a fire trail to separate it from the woods that it's next to. And I burned the whole thing.
When was this?
In 2 burns. It was 2 winters ago.
That doesn't feel real.
Yeah, I burned.
I was still at home. Crazy.
No, you were not.
No, I was
somehow.
away. I was away.
You were away.
I was in my vagabond phase.
You were in your
Am I using that
vagabond
word
phase.
But
No,
I still
yeah, you are.
theoretically lived at home.
Yeah, you were in your vagabond. I remember you were not there. And it was one of the most fun things I've ever done. It was in the middle of the winter, middle of the snow, and I put out a lawn chair and I was drinking my tea sort of in front of the campfire, but the campfire was 35 feet in diameter.
Oh, shit. Wait, that took me a second to actually process. This reminds me of 2 songs.
Okay.
The first one is $20 by Boy Genius, and then Arsonist Lullaby by Hosier. If anyone's interested in songs about arson.
This girl is on fire.
Yeah, well, I would hope not.
No. I didn't set any women on fire.
Just men.
Just men. And one time, I cooked a can of chicken noodle soup, or I heated it up in the blaze. On the outskirts of the blaze. It was fucking delicious. It was so good.
That sounds so good. Oh my God.
Delightful.
We so we had a little dinner party thing yesterday, for my roommate's birthday, and me and
I
Danielle,
love everything about your roommates. They're so wholesome.
Yeah, it was a wholesome affair, but me and Danielle, my cousin who I live with, were making chicken and fucking wait, why did this remind me? Oh, just the can of chicken noodle soup. Very weak connection. But we were so locked in because we wanted them all to cook right, because cooking chicken is stressful.
It is.
We didn't even notice that people were arriving. We're like, oh, everyone's here.
Yeah.
And we're just like...
There's only one shell in Francie's brain at that moment.
She's like, okay, keep breading. And then she's like, I need you to cut open this one, see if it's done. And I'm like, okay. Like, yes, chef. Like...
That's awesome.
Anyway.
We should have defined this way before now. So I live on the property we grew up on, and it's a relatively large property in Maine, in the middle of the woods, in the middle of absolute bumfuck. And it's 165 acres, which is not actually a lot for rural scale, but it's relatively big. And there were 2 barns on the property, and now there is about 0.45 barns.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the Google Maps. So for 6-7 years, the Google Earth did not update of our property. And then it finally updated, and it shows all the trees I've cut down, and 1 barn got axed. It was this summer.
I looked recently, actually.
Yeah.
I was showing someone where I lived, which is always a funny experience.
Why?
Because most of the people that I'm around now grew up in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just in this phase of life. I have friends who are not from here, but my roommates. So I describe where I'm from, and it's like, and then I sort of zoom in on the map, and it's sort of like, wait, what? Because it's like a completely different environment, and it's hard to fathom, I think.
It's so different not in terms of like, I think there's a lot about life that's the same, you know, but it just looks so different.
I think that there's so much of life that's the same. Like, I go out and get a snack for myself probably the same amount as when I lived at home.
Yeah.
I live probably 50 steps from a store. And I probably avail myself of it just maybe a little bit more.
So
as when I like needed to get a ride.
Right. So listeners, recently Francie called me and I said, you need to go get yourself some ice cream because this is just what you need to do in life right now, I feel. And Francie said, it's 50 steps away and I might do it.
I did do it.
I'm glad. To be clear, I'm not saying it's like weak because it is somehow the same. I don't know. It's like, this is what you're saying. It's like, I don't know why it's the same, but it is somehow the same.
It's the same. I mean, well, I did live the better portion of my life in that environment, and darn, do I miss it. I'm very homesick, but
yeah,
I feel kind of disconnected from my sense of self, and I know that if I were to go home, I would be able to find a piece of it, and that's really appealing. I know I left some of it.
Yeah.
And I could just go pick it up, and I know that I could. And
oh yeah, that sounds hard.
Not having or not feeling like I have any of it with me. It's very hard to not be like, I need to go pick that up. I don't know. I've been pretty much all I've been listening to is the new Kendrick Lamar album.
Yeah.
And
you and everybody else, apparently.
Yeah. So he, obviously the Super Bowl happened this past week, which I did not watch. I skipped the Super Bowl party. But then the next morning I had to wait like 15 minutes for the train in the morning. So I watched the whole performance. And I've been a big Kendrick fan for a while. So I loved the performance. And I feel like a lot of people have been talking about it a lot because of he did this Not Like Us song, which is this diss track. Everyone knows about this, but his album, GNX, is quickly becoming my favorite album by him.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to the song Luther probably 10 times today. I just played it on loop, even at work.
I actually don't know any of this. So what is this song about?
The song that I was just talking, the Luther, or the
any
Not
song?
Like Us?
I haven't heard a song from this album.
So Not Like Us is not on the album. It's a diss track that he made against Drake. Yeah. And to be so fair, I don't super understand the drama. But the song is accusing Drake of being like a pedophile.
Yeah.
Of really treating girls like shit.
Right.
And he performed it at the Super Bowl, cutting out the one line that just said that word.
Right. It's like certified lover boy, certified pedophile. Is that the line?
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Crazy. Yeah. But that actually specifically, I don't super know about the drama. I think J. Cole accidentally started it.
I don't know who J. Cole is.
Just another rapper, who said that. I think he said that him, Drake, and Kendrick were the top 3, and then Kendrick was like, "No, girl, it's just me. I'm the top one." And then J. Cole said, "Oh, actually, politely, I don't want to be in this drama anymore. Goodbye."
Right. I'm back out.
He stepped away. But the album, you don't really listen to a lot of music.
It's true. It's weird. Maybe there's people like me.
I think he's a beautiful writer. And I think with rap music, you have there's a unique ability to tell stories.
Yeah. It's more writer heavy.
And I would have always said my favorite Kendrick album is To Pimp a Butterfly, which is, I think, a masterpiece. I love albums. I get into artists by listening to an album front to back.
God, could not be more different. I could not be more different.
Do you get into songs?
Yeah, I've literally never listened to an album front to back.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, To Pimp a Butterfly, listening to that album front to back is like watching a really good movie. Mm-hmm. He has this, my ex told me this. He got me into a lot of music when I was younger, which is funny. Because when you think about his personality and his politics, you wouldn't think that he was into the music he's into. Anyway, there's this poem that he builds on the end of each song. And at the end of the last song, he reads the whole poem. And then, I could be fact checked on this. I don't know that this is 100% right, but what I heard is this conversation between him and Tupac. And the audio is real audio of Tupac's voice that had never been heard before. That his mother gave him. Tupac's mother gave Kendrick Lamar to put on the album. And I always thought that was so stunning.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have always thought that that was my favorite album. But this album, there's something about it that is like, it's telling his story. It's like, this is an album about him and about his world and his story. There's one song called Reincarnated where he goes into like versions of like his past lives. And it's just like, this is so real and it's so good. And I'm happy that, I mean, in his Super Bowl show, like, he's so commanding. And people were saying like rap isn't like a super good, doesn't work with the Super Bowl format. And I'm like, well, this was the most viewed television event since the moon landing. So
that's crazy.
And it's just really like ignited my love of that type of music again.
Yeah.
'Cause I've been in a musical rut. So it's nice to feel passionate about this, I guess.
That's awesome.
Even though I don't make this type of music.
That's true. But I don't think that makes a big difference in terms of creativity.
Yeah, I'm thinking about writing, at least, which is, I don't know, it's just good to think about something. It's good to use the mind.
Yeah, I feel like, you're engaged in...
The word that pops into my head is like magic. When you fall in love with a piece of music, with a work of art in general, it kind of feels like falling in love with a person. Like, it feels like magic. I think creating art feels the same way. I was reading a story I wrote years ago for the first time in a long time yesterday, and it was really fun. And so I think it's a similar feeling of like indescribable joy. Or sadness. It can be sadness too. Damn it. Fuck. 1 second. What was the last thing we talked about? Oh, we were talking about music. Okay. All right. Well, we're going to say goodbye. Hope you all have a good night. Thanks for listening. Thanks for talking, Eli.
I think it would be funny if all of that stayed in. Your whole little micro crash out.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, before we go, Francie, what's a W crash out? Do you know?
No.
W crash out. I feel like it's not something that you can explain. It's just something you understand. When somebody crashes out, and you're just like,
but they win.
W crash out. No. So you're watching somebody crash out, just totally crash out, and then you turn to them and you're like, man, W crash out.
All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thanks for sharing. Good luck. Best wishes. Tip your bartenders and waitresses. Eli, thanks for talking.
Thank you.
Everyone have a good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Call your brother.
Peace the fuck out.